This time on Between the Wheels.
You can't do an episode on hot rods and not do a car from the 20s.
This thing weighs 1,250 pounds. I mean, it's as light as a feather. I mean, this is a strong engine. This thing is fast. Oh, but this you have to drive. You have to hang on and you have to drive it.
Oh man, I have no idea what speed I'm going. It doesn't matter.
Bought it new in 1970.
Those were the best days of our lives, I think.
17 years old when I bought that car.
Ran on the street. I went there, made noise, and went home.
Yeah, that's what it feels like in a 9-second car.
I got it up on jack stands and I cried.
Most people would look at it and say, it's a basket case, you can't fix that.
I mean, we didn't have any safety checks, none of this bullshit now. I mean, everybody just drove a car, you know?
At 40 miles an hour, if you get in a crash in this thing, you're friggin' dead.
I spent probably 16-hour days. I would end up sleeping in the body shop in a car.
It's gonna be a lot of work, and she said, who cares?
It wasn't that we had money falling out of our pockets. We made the car happen because of the desire to restore the car.
So this year on the show, we've done a lot of cars, primarily muscle cars from the mid-60s to the early 70s. We're talking about drag racing, street machines, street outlaws from the past. But this time we're doing something a little bit different. You can't do an episode on hot rods and not do a car from the 20s. And that's exactly what we got here. Mind you, it is more of a modern build, but we're gonna get into talking about hot rods, what they are, kind of the definition and how it all started. But before we do that, I gotta introduce somebody on the show. This is the owner of the car itself, a Canadian legend in a way, because you've been working in the car community for well over 40 years, and you work with a lot of celebrities and PR and whatnot, but you're kind of a celebrity yourself because what you've done is actually, you've had a lot of contributions to the automotive industry here locally in Ontario and in Canada and in North America, and you're seen as one of the top judges for car shows in North America. So Mr. Larry Wade, it's nice to see you.
Thank you for this. And I'm not a legend, I'm just a guy. I live in Clarence Point and I'm just a guy. So I've been very fortunate. I've lived a blessed life. I've judged car shows for 40 years. I've done public relations for 30. I work as a celebrity handler, and I've had the good fortune of meeting a lot of people, and I work 7 days a week and I love it.
And it's funny because everybody I meet in the automotive industry, especially with classic cars, very humble people like yourself. So really cool, and but your reputation precedes you. And at the same time, before we get into the car itself, let's talk about how did the whole hot rod movement begin?
In the 20s and 30s, guys would start to modify cars. You know, when V8s come out, they'd say a car had a 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder, they would put a flathead V8 in it and it would make it go faster and they'd race and stuff, but there was nothing really organized. Then World War II hit, and after World War II, magazines started, and guys that came back after the war had some money, not a lot of money, but they would make a car, paint it, say, satin black or red oxide primer, and a flathead engine, very basic car, no fenders or anything like that. And that's because they didn't have the money to, maybe they had a little bit of money, but not a lot, but to complete the car. So then, as Hot Rod magazine started, a bunch of other publications started, and then this whole thing started to take off. Organized racing, guys would race. Then they started having drag racing tracks and stock car tracks to keep people off the streets. And then the whole thing evolved from there. And look at today, it's still very strong. Drag racing is still very strong, not as strong as it once was. Right. NASCAR racing, professional stock car racing is still very strong. Maybe not as strong as it was 10 years ago, it's still very strong. Outdoor car shows, indoor car shows, there's still, everything's still going. Right. It's still a strong automotive interest.
So it all really began with this era vehicle,
exactly right,
and that movement and whatnot, and that also turned into the gasser movement, right? Maybe talk about that.
Gassers were, what they did, they took a straight axle front end where they took, say, a 60s car, and they put a front end that was from one of these cars with high springs, so it would sit up high like this, and that would, the weight would transfer then. So the car was really cool like this, but when you would take off, the weight would push down and the cars would go faster, and they look cool. Yeah. So guys today are building gasser cars, which with the straight axle, they call them, front end. Instead of just sitting like this, really cool. To a car guy, it's cool stuff.
That's really cool, especially knowing that it all kind of began with this style.
And
it
all began in the 20s and 30s with this.
Let's talk about maybe some of your achievements you've done in the automotive community, because you've been putting on car shows, you've been doing it for over 40 years. Maybe talk about that.
We used to have a show here in Ottawa called Autorama, an indoor car show. I started judging there. So I learned as I was going, I taught myself. I learned from some of the best PR people. Fast forward to today, I don't judge much anymore. I judge the odd show, but I do more public relation and I work as a celebrity handler.
If there's a couple things that go with celebrities, it's music and cars, and that's exactly what we got here. So what we got here is a culmination of all those things, and there's a lot of musical influences, there's some celebrity signatures on the inside, so I guess that's what we're going to talk about. So maybe introduce this car, show me what am I looking at here and what makes this unique, and I don't even know where to start.
I believe cars, motorcycles, and music all go hand in hand.
Right.
So I have a 1928 Ford Roadster that my friend Terry Morrow built. He said he was going to build a 29 pickup. I said, okay. Model A Fords were built from 28, 29, 30, 31. He says, I want it to be a 29 cab. Not a 28, not a 31, a 29. I said, okay. So I said, would you build it for me and we'll build it in a musical theme? Would you do that? He said, sure. So he bought the frame. I found this cab in Syracuse, New York, brought it home, and he built it. We bought a car. The engine is a 289 cubic inch Mustang, engine 4-speed, manual transmission, and a Mustang rear end. So we bought a car and put the drivetrain in, and Terry built it. But the whole thing has to do with music. So everybody remembers the band The Who. A friend of mine, while I was building this, gave me a bass drum kick pedal that Keith Moon used from The Who, the original drummer. So that's the gas pedal. It has a microphone shifter. I've had good fortune to work with a lot of musicians. The dash is autographed by Paul Revere's Raiders, the original members of the association, Mary Wilson from the Supremes, Gary Lewis and Gary Lewis and the Playboys, Mitch Ryder from Mitch Ryder and the Troy at Wheels, singer-songwriter Tony Wine, Peter Rivera, who was the original lead singer and drummer of Rare Earth. They've all signed the dash. The one door panel signed by the band Exciter, which is noted as one of the first heavy metal bands. And they've influenced Metallica. And the other one, there's a popular TV show that's just finished this last season called Counting Cars. Danny Coker, who's the star of the show, has a band called Count 77, and they signed the door panel on the passenger side. Wow. There's a guitar inside. It's signed by the Cooper Brothers, Wayne Ronstadt, and Sherry Harding, which are local Ottawa area artists.
So this is really cool. There's a lot of musical influences here. Now, going back, you were mentioning the years 28, 29, 30, 31. Why 29 specifically?
He just wanted to build a 29.
Okay.
So right now he's building, and it's almost done, a 38 Ford tow truck. He hand fabricated everything. He bought a frame, bought a cab, and he hand fabricated everything. It's an incredible truck. And one day I'll own it. I get first, I'm supposed to get first right. So when he decides, he's not going to build another car probably, or truck, but when he decides to sell it, I'll own it.
Well, it's pretty cool. A lot of these guys that build cars, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time. Their last car is always their most incredible, it's their masterpiece, right?
Exactly right.
But it's really cool to have something they've done previously. Obviously here, this is something he's done previously, and this is really crazy. When I look at this, it's like nothing I've seen before. First of all, the thing that catches my eye was actually the rear suspension. I've never seen suspension like this before.
He handmade everything. He's fantastic. It took about 2 years to build it, and we had scheduled a photo shoot to be on the cover of a magazine, and it wasn't done, it wasn't running. The engine was in, it was not running. So we towed it over. We shot it in my yard. We had 2 pinup girls, friends of mine, their wives dressed up as pinup girls. So it took an extra year, so what? It didn't matter.
But isn't that the case? I've heard of cars that seem having no drive shafts, actually, because some of these cars just aren't drivable, but they're meant for show. Now, when I'm looking at this, the bed is not the original bed. There's no way that was...
The bed on a Model A is like almost 6 feet long. It's a long bed. So Terry didn't want a long bed because we only had the cab, so we bought 2 utility trailers and made a small bed. Then I had my friend Bob Johnson from Johnson Welding Works make the gas tank and made me another box on the other side, which holds 45 records. Now, I holiday in France, and so at community garage sales, I bought 250 45 records. Some of them are American, some of them are French, but they're in the bed. Then there's in between those two is a 1965 Gibson guitar amp. That's the battery box. And in front of that is a 6-horn set built in Italy that plays a Star Trek TV theme. So everything about the truck has to do with music.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Just the back of the truck has so many things you can talk about here. You see, that's kind of interesting is you got gas tank and you got gas tank over here. Originally, the gas tank was in the front. Obviously, you don't have gas in there anymore.
Model A Fords, this was the gas tank. This is really dangerous. I mean, if something happens, You know, you're driving down the road and something happens.
It's a bomb, essentially.
It's a bomb, yeah. So but that was one of the things.
Okay.
Henry Ford, I mean, Fords were built to be affordable cars, and which they did. So they designed them and they sold zillions of them. I mean, Henry Ford did really well, obviously.
Right. And when times passed, these became modified because they were cheap. And we're going to talk about that soon. But before we do that, one of the other things I want to talk about is maybe talk about the front here, because obviously there's a lot going on here.
It's got an I-beam suspension, front tube suspension, the steering. He hand fabricated all this stuff. I mean, this is what's so cool about this. I mean, he sits there and he looks at it and he doesn't go 1-800, he just makes things.
Right. So this is not aftermarket, nothing. This is all custom.
No, it's all custom. Now the brakes, yes, the brake drums, yes.
Right.
But all the other brackets and all that, he made all that stuff.
And the brakes, I've noticed, is 4 drums, but there's no point of having disc brakes on a car. Like, how much does this
thing weighs 1,250 pounds. Yeah, I mean, it's as light as a feather. I mean, we'll go for a ride. This is a strong engine. This thing is fast.
Yeah. So in terms of the engine, now you mentioned a Mustang engine. What are the specs in terms of horsepower on this engine?
It's a 289, 221 horsepower. So they had one at 271, but so my friend ran the numbers, and it's a 221 horse.
Wow. For something this small, you got to think about weight here.
For this light, there's no weight to this. And 221 horsepower and a 4-speed, it's fast.
It's going to fly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, 221 horsepower, that's a joke. It's not if it's light. A lot of drag racers, so I've had the ability to do a lot of drag racers, and it's about shedding weight is just as important as making things faster.
Exactly
so there's not much weight to this. It's a high boy. They've taken all the outer fenders off and everything.
There's no fenders. There's no glasses. The windshield.
There's no roof.
There's no roof.
This thing is as light as it gets. So I haven't been in something this light before with that amount of power. So I'm really interested to see that. But before we do that, we're going to still talk about a little bit more of the car. Now, another thing that caught my eye was the pinstriping.
Pinstriping started in the 50s, I would say. People would do this on new cars at dealerships, and would send something just to break up the paint or something, and then it caught on, and then hot rodders and custom cars. So pinstriping still lives on strong today. A lot of our indoor shows, we have artists that will come and they'll pinstripe panels or purses or whatever it is and sell it for charity. So pinstriping is still strong. So Paul Elias, who lives in Castleman, not far from here, is probably the best pinstriper in this area. I gave him the doors, he did the lettering, and then he came and I gave him the air cleaner and stuff, but what couldn't be moved, he came and did it at my place.
That's pretty cool. And maybe talk about the doors, because you got a custom here with your name on it. Maybe, how did that come about?
So I'm a huge music fan, as you know. So I called it Larry's Music Store. In the 20s, I'm told, you would call the operator and you would say way, and you'd say 3 numbers. And that's so 717, which is 7th month, 17th day. That's my birthday. So that's why I picked those numbers.
Very cool.
So I just come up with ideas. It says music is the harmony of life below the rear window, which I saw on a plaque at Disney World. So Paul said, what do you want? I said, I just want something tasteful. Right. So you do it, and whatever you come up with, that's how it'll be.
Well, it's a really cool theme you got here, the kind of the rat rod, and you got the musical influences and whatnot. Looking at this thing, I'm absolutely dying to get inside it and go for a drive, because this was, now you have an amazing collection back there. You got so many vehicles, but this one really caught my eye. I think we got to go for a cruise.
Let's go.
What it's like. What's it like driving a car that you know that has been around here for basically almost a century? You know what I mean?
It's different, because when we drive our everyday cars, I mean, it's fantastic, right? It's got power steering and brakes, and you set the cruise control, and you sit back and it's comfortable. But this you have to drive. You have to hang on and you have to drive it.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It makes it fun.
It makes you feel alive, that's for sure.
It is, and it's fun that it's a 4-speed. My Volkswagen is a 4-speed, but I mean, a light turns green, you're shifting gears before you even get on the other side of the intersection because it doesn't have any power.
Right.
Wow. Where this is fun to drive.
Plenty of power here.
Because there's no roof and no windows, obviously there's a ton of wind noise, but what the heck?
That's part of the experience, man. Yeah, it doesn't get any more open than this. This is, yeah.
So people say, what do you do if it rains? Well, you get wet. That's what I mean. Normally you wouldn't plan to go somewhere if rain has been forecasted, but it can happen.
Oh, wow.
And you can smell the engine.
I love it. This is like nothing else I've ever been in before, and I've been in a
pretty cool
20s
isn't it?
truck. Yeah, it's super cool. Wow. This is wicked cool. Okay, this is something different. Holy cow! It takes some skill to keep this on the road.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
It's all over the place. It's fantastic.
Holy cow! I thought my Jeep was wild. It was nothing compared to this thing.
Imagine when this, all of a sudden you go and this door would fly open. It's scary for the passenger.
Wow! I am loving this. This is both terrifying and exciting at the same time, which is probably what makes it so much fun. Wow. I have no idea what speed I'm going. It doesn't matter.
Going about 30, 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah, your brakes are still pretty responsive considering how light this car is, you know?
Oh no, it's good.
Alright, so make sure nobody's anywhere near me when I go. I didn't mean to drive that aggressively. It's just, it's pretty crazy. Wow. Okay, this takes some skill to drive. Back that way. Okay. Try to keep it a little tamer now. There we go. This is really cool, man. Thank you for letting me do this. It's fun, isn't it? Holy cow, is it ever. Well, Larry, thanks for letting me have a drive. And
thank you, it was fun. This has been a fun morning.
Holy crap, is it ever.
Isn't it fun to drive?
I didn't expect
this
to drive.
Is wild.
So that was pretty cool. It was wild, and your history and everything. Thanks for giving us a history on hot rods in general, and then thank you for your contributions.
Thank you for this.
No worries, man. Everybody that's on the show gets a Between the Wheels hat.
Well, thank you so much. I'll wear it.
It's a little memento, so you keep so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate everything. Thank you.
And we're gonna have Larry again because he has a lot of cool cars in there. I'm not gonna tell you what they are, but you're gonna see them the next season.
Next time on Between the Wheels.
That's not just a regular Challenger. There's something to it.
What fun is a muscle car without a manual transmission? I mean, really? A lot of money spent on cars, you know, and don't want to go there because the wife will have an opinion on it.